Yo, oh man, what is up, guys? Give it a second for some people to come up in here. Definitely just wanted to give my thoughts on everything that's kind of happening with Destiny and Bungie and kind of crazy. Let me put this. uh, But yeah, it's kind of rough out here. Bungie's laying off people, Sony's laying off people. The whole industry is just going crazy when it comes to like laying off people. And I think my biggest problem with it is the fact that this is happening right before the holidays. We're having record breaking years when it comes to just games and everything. What's up, Onyx, man? What's going on? Yeah, don't I just felt compelled to do this one. Everybody knows I love Destiny, and even though I haven't really played the game as much over the course of like the last couple of months, probably just sparely jumping in doing raids with the homies and stuff. It's still one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, it cannot be because I put so much time in, like the time that I invested in that game, the friendships that I made in that game. It kind of just makes this whole situation a little like surreal, but it sucks to see what's happening at that studio. It sucks to see what's happening at PlayStation 2. This all kind of started with Jim Ryan deciding to, step down as the head of PlayStation, citing the fact that he's just tired of traveling, going coast to coast. And I get that. It's, that's a taxing thing, um especially when it's like a lot that you have to do, especially at that position. The bar is set so high. Um, and then you got to make decisions that continue to make money every year. And I felt like Jim Ryan was the best thing for PlayStation at that time because, COVID happened and then it just ended up being this situation where everybody wanted to stay afloat. And I felt like he did that. But I also think they pivoted way too hard into the whole games as a service thing. I felt like they needed to focus on what made PlayStation great. You know, it shouldn't be about how to take other people from other platforms and stuff or just to get them to be on your platform. If your games are great, people are going to come to you. People went to PlayStation because those games were great. And people play Bungie games because Bungie games are great. They have some of the best gunplay, they have some of the best mechanics. They just have this magic that a lot of people truly enjoy. And it's kind of been like this slow decline. What's up? What's up, Mav? How you doing, bro? It's just been like this decline inside of the studio, it feels like, when it comes to the game, that they were being pulled in so many different directions. It's like you're dealing with a situation where they're working on, it seems like, 3 IPs at this point. A lot of people were thinking Matter was what they were working on when it comes to Marathon. Still up in the air on that, but it does seem like Marathon and Matter are their own two separate entities. But then you also still had Destiny. And then you have PlayStation coming in saying, we want you to basically oversee our games as a service division to make sure that these studios are making the games that they need to make. And that's what the acquisition for the 3.5 billion or 3.6 billion dollars was for, with the 1.6 in retention. And it was a statement made by Pete Parson almost 2 years ago where he talked about this move or this acquisition would not hinder or would not bring any type of restructuring or layoffs or anything at the company. And here we are, almost 2 years later, exactly what's going on. And we're not stupid. We know that we know that we know that this is basically something that always happens. I just wish he didn't say that. It's like, because you're giving a false sense of comfort to people to let them know, like, oh, yes, we can still operate in everything on our own. Now, yes, when it comes to like games and putting those games out and being able to put Bungie games wherever they want to, they absolutely had that autonomy. They wrote it into the contract that we can still release our games on Xbox, PlayStation, PC, wherever we want to do. It's our discretion. You just flip the check for everything else. But it's not their decision on if Sony wants to come in and say we got to cut fat somewhere. And it should have always been the case that, you know, when it comes to especially PR, marketing, I mean, it's a lot of different things that kind of overlap between, you know, Sony and Bungie. And the fact that when you looked at the article, they talk about it as a subsidiary to Sony, meaning it's in line with PlayStation, but not under PlayStation. It just kind of breathes a little bit more of a credence to the fact that Bungie truly probably felt like they were going to be able to operate autonomously, but it just comes back to, there's a lot of stuff going on with Sony right now. They gotta cut costs wherever they can cut them. The fact that the final shape is being delayed, you know, it's not been complete. It hasn't even been announced by PlayStation yet or by Bungie yet. But Jason Schreier has kind of been a pit bull when it comes to stuff like this. So if he says it, it kind of definitely happened. It says all of my hardcore friends dropped Destiny a long time ago for some reason. Man, it's a lot of people that dropped it, and it was the very hardcore, dedicated fans that truly loved that game to the point where they were like, "Yo, I just can't get off this game," and it took a little bit of all the stuff that's been happening over the last couple of months with like the seasons not really living up to expectations, just, you know, coming around to that final year where you're like, man, I've been playing this game for 9 years. It's about to be 10 years. And you finally hit that wall. It's like, I really just don't want to do the little things. Like, I don't want to run strikes anymore. I don't want to do the little things like running from planet to planet to collect these things to, you know, build this thing or to complete this mission. It's like, it becomes like a chore. And that's why I never really committed fully into content creation for Destiny, even knowing a lot of people say, yeah, you do really well with it. And I have a lot of videos on my channel that did good too. But I never completely fully went into it due to the fact that I didn't want it to feel like a job. And Destiny started feeling like that. So that's why I've kind of pulled away a bit on it. But it definitely sucks to see that it's actually going down that way. Mav says, less people probably play Destiny than in other years just because the amount of other releases. Absolutely. And you can see that due to the monetization that they're putting into the game more consistently. You know, they have things like level skips in the game. You can skip campaigns for a charge. I think it's like $20 per character. You know, all standard fare stuff that when you look at it on the outset, it's like, yeah, why would you want to do that? But it's like, it's not even tied to like your account is tied to per character. And if you're a person with 3 characters, they're charging you $60 to skip the campaign on all 3 characters, which is nuts. And then you just think about how the monetization of all of the DLCs and the games are broken down. Like if you go on Steam and you just look at all the different versions of the games you can buy, it's like it all overlaps with each other. It's like, what are we doing here? There should just be this one thing that you could just buy to just get as many people in there. What's going on, Gritty? How you doing, brother? Maybe they weren't pulling in as much money as they used to. I don't know if they're not pulling in just as much money. I mean, it could be that. It definitely could be that. But I also think it's just a little thing. They're just stretched way too thin. Like they're working on Marathon. They're working on Matter. Whatever. We don't even know what that is yet. They're working on Destiny. They're working on a final shape. They're doing all the work for PlayStation when it comes to these live service games and trying to be the arbiter to make sure these studios can release those games and or just have quality underneath those games. And this is a 1,000-man studio. So I think Bungie looked at it as like we get stability from PlayStation and we're able to still make the games that we need to make. But I just don't think they understood the task that was going to be handed to them when it comes to what these studios they were going to be helping was going to have like take away from their studio, because these are studios that know nothing of live service. Like they're single player studios. Like these studios are all studios that make single player games. And there's not an ABC to a live service game. Destiny wasn't an ABC game. Destiny almost died a couple of times, due to just the player base and just other things in the game that was happening when it comes to people just being upset with the direction of the game. So it's really, really interesting to see that all come full circle. What's up, Greggy? How you doing, brother? But I just think that you have community managers being let go. You have DMG, who was one of the older community managers that left the company a couple months ago, talking about how this was more of a leadership issue and not a leadership issue at, Sony, by the way, kind of talking about Bungie. And this goes back to what I said about Activision, when Activision and Bungie were making the game together. The game had never been it has never been as great as when it was with Activision, because Activision gave them studios like High Moon that was able to help them make amazing DLCs. Like Forsaken was as good as it was because Vicarious Visions went in and crafted most of that DLC when it comes to the menagerie and everything, when it comes to like the seasonal events and everything. I was like, yes, they had good seasons since then. Witch Queen was really, really cool. And we all championed Bungie for going out on their own, being independent again. But it's a lot when you're self-published and you have a player base this hungry for content to make it. So I understand why they broke down and went to Sony for this. But this is the thing. This is why I always felt like Microsoft would have been the better bet. And this isn't an Xbox versus PlayStation thing. The reason I felt like Microsoft was the better bet is because I know Microsoft, they have live service. They have Halo. They have, Forza, for what people say. They have Sea of Thieves, and they have Grounded. They have a template around live service. So they don't need Bungie to come in and help them usher in live services, because they kind of been doing it since 2016. So it's like Bungie could have just been Bungie. They could have just been making their games, not being stretched too thin. They could use the money that Microsoft can provide to them to basically have a stable game, have a flourishing game, because the game has still flourished over the last 2 years with its pitfalls, up and downs. But I just don't get how you could tell your people that there's not going to be any changes, and then 2 years later there are. So what's up, Adele? Yeah, TTS, bro, TTS. But it's just disappointing for the most part. That's the biggest thing. I just wish that we had more of as gamers, I wish we had more of a say in the things that we cared about, because we all support these games, but guess what? The only thing that really matters is the 10% you can make year over year. And I tell people that all the time. If you're not a company that's trying to improve 10% of your revenue or profits every year, you ain't doing it right. And that's not a good way to live, because guess what? Whatever goes up must come down. It's simple math. You can't continually grow your revenue, because at some point the market's not going to bear it. Like, how much of the adjustable market is willing to buy into Destiny at this point? Destiny will never be as high as it ever has been since Destiny 2. Maybe if a Destiny 3 came, a lot of people will come back if they made some changes. But the top of the mountain is when you come out with a brand new game. That's why Destiny 1, when it released, they said they So $500 million dollars worth of copies, which is close to 8.5 million copies on day one. 8.5 million people bought the game on day one because they were excited to know what a Bungie game was going to be that was not Halo. A lot of people were disappointed. They fell off. Some people came back for Destiny 2, and the game just kind of, built itself over the course of the last 10 years. I just don't get, once again, what happened. It's like, there's a lot of there was a GDC conversation. I mean, presentation that happened where they were talking about you don't want to over deliver to your players. You want to kind of milk them along, and you don't want to surprise and over deliver to them. And I'm thinking, like, that's what gaming is. It's all about over delivering. You want people to think about the memories they had in games to make you want to come back to those games when something else comes out for it. And I think there's some studios that do that better than others. But are we getting to the end of the road when it comes to like games like Destiny and stuff? Or even think about it, Fortnite. They just laid off a good chunk of people, and the funny thing is, what's the name? The CEO of Fortnite of Epic comes out and says, it's my fault that these people are being laid off. But guess what? They're not taking a hit for this. They're still at the company. They're still bringing in, billions and trillions, billions and billions of dollars annually. But we got people sitting on the sideline that they don't know what their next move is. Just looking at some of the people's conversations on Twitter that, worked at Bungie just kind of speaks to that. It was like not a planned thing. It seemed like it just kind of happened. And that's crazy. What's up, Grim Tango? How you doing, man? I mean, but for the most part, PlayStation, we knew that this was a conversation that was going to be had. No new first party titles that were announced past basically Wolverine and Helldivers and stuff like that. But they're basically been living off of second party and third party deals that they've been ushering in. You got Final Fantasy Rebirth coming out early next year. Spider-Man's doing really, really well. Still shocked that we haven't heard any like 1 week numbers of that game. They announced that they had 2.5 million sales during the first 24 hours of the game. And I'm like, that's great. But that also include bundle sales, which bundle sales kind of started back in September. September 1st to be exact, when they sold the Spider-Man actual system with the game in there that you couldn't redeem until October 21st. So they kind of marketed that game for a month and a half. So it's interesting to see that we haven't heard anything else about sales for that. And maybe we will by the end of this week. Who knows? But we really don't know what's going on at PlayStation. This is just another thing that's happening underneath PlayStation, or lateral to PlayStation, since Bungie isn't underneath it. I worry that a lot of the stuff that we enjoy as gamers is just going to change or evaporate right in front of us. Like the final shape is being delayed to June. That hasn't been announced by Bungie or PlayStation yet, but it's being highly rumored from Jason Schreier that that's the case. So where do we go from here? Is this the end of one of the most tenured games that we have in games as a service? I don't think it's the end, but I was talking to Slow-Mo earlier about this. Is there going to be another expansion or a DLC after this? Like they said, they're doing episodic stuff after the final shape, but are they ramping down to basically leave Destiny behind? Are we ever going to get like a Destiny 3? Marathon's right around the corner. We know that they're going to at least support Destiny throughout the initial launch of Marathon, because that's their only revenue right now outside of what PlayStation gives them. So maybe Bungie isn't making enough money to, keep Destiny afloat, and PlayStation's putting more money into it because a lot of the player base right now is super low in Destiny. I mean, it's still 40,000 people. You can only see Steam numbers, but it officially fell off the chart for Xbox. It used to be in the top 10 games played on Xbox. Same thing on PlayStation. I haven't looked at the PlayStation chart. So math might be right. It might have fallen off completely when it comes to console. And this is a game that we used to look at as like almost 250,000 players a day if you looked at all platforms combined. Thank you, Grim. Appreciate it. Is this PlayStation or is it Bungie itself? When Bungie had trouble under Activision, lots of people blamed Activision. And guess what? I never blamed Activision. I used to sit on panels, on podcasts, and say, we need to kind of look at Bungie for this, because guess what? Bungie signed a contract with Activision. They took their $500 million and said, we need your $500 million to help us make Destiny. They did that. I think Activision kind of kept Bungie on schedule when it came to like releases. Yes, they had some rigorous schedule timelines and stuff, but guess what? It got results. Like I said, there has been some positive things that come out of Bungie being off on their own, but the game had never been as stable. It has never been as fun. Well, it's been, I ain't gonna say it's never been as fun. It's been exciting without Activision too. But some of the best memories of Destiny were when they were at Activision. And I just think that it was just disingenuous for people to come out and say nothing's going to change because of the acquisition under PlayStation. PlayStation, if they need to take money from somewhere and they have places that they can cut from, just because you have autonomy in where your games release at and are not first party, doesn't mean everything else is out of realm for them. Like if they need to cut staff and you have an abundance of staff that you don't need because they could just use their PR side of it, they could use their community managers, or they can use their audio engineers for music and stuff, then that's kind of what you signed up for. So once again, Bungie went into a scenario where they don't have full control over everything. The only way you have full control of everything is if you are independent, but I don't think they can operate independently by themselves. And Marty O'Donnell being let go, that's a crime. Some of the best music ever created was with him and Marty O'Donnell, going all the way back to Marathon, going all the way back to Halo, the Halo series. That music was done in conjunction with Marty and Marty O'Donnell. So I just feel like that kind of just speaks volumes. Like, wait a minute, this dude got laid off, like been here since the 90s. That man deserved to like retire at Bungie at that point. So who really knows exactly what's going to happen with that? But I don't know. I mean, the biggest thing is, what do you guys think about it? Do you think that PlayStation is, just floundering right in front of us? I don't know. It's a very interesting thing to kind of think about, because I think about what the Iron Lords, I watched them and King talk about it's going to be an app and it's not going to be a PlayStation 6. I still don't know if that's the case. I mean, I still don't think that's the case, but stuff like this just makes it kind of starts moving the odds a little bit closer to what he's saying. It's just like an injury in football. It's like, yeah, your team should win by 3 points, but now that this person's injured, it's like now they should only win by 1 point, or maybe the odds flip to the other side because of stuff like that. So the more and more stuff that piles up, the more and more it just doesn't look good for the future of PlayStation's got going on. And the fact that they moved, like I said, they moved the final shape out of this fiscal year for PlayStation. So it's like PlayStation is looking at it as, in my opinion, it looks like they're looking at it as like, we have enough revenue to survive and have really good, a really good and positive earnings call, which they're having on the 9th of November. So they already know they're going to have that. And the holiday sales of PlayStations and all the games they're going to sell are going to hold them through the next quarter. But the fact that Final Shape came out right at the end of the fiscal year for them, I think they're looking at it like we can still have a very profitable fiscal year, even if that game's not there. So they move it out of the year to the start of next year. So when they do have their first quarter fiscal year, they can actually, have boosted numbers and stuff like that. Because I don't feel like this game is being delayed because it's not ready. There has been no indication from Bungie about this game not being ready. They just shown off in the showcase on August 22nd that this game and all the stuff that they were doing for it. We'll be getting communication weekly from just the team about how excited and that they're ready for the game to come out. Joe Blackburn, the producer, he's been doing streams talking about different things. So there's been no indication that this is definitely something that needed to be delayed. And like, once again, this could be rumor, but it's Jason Schreier. So you kind of got to be like, I believe this more than not believe it. Start the next year in a positive. That's possibility. That's what I think it is. I think they're just starting the year positive, and they want to be able to have something like that for people. Onyx says, Forte, you think gearing up for a bad quarter and they're adjusting for the shareholders. That's what it seems like. That's exactly what it seems like. What do they have for the whole first quarter of their next fiscal year? What games do they have? They know they're going to post really good results at the end of this year because of the holidays. They know that's going to happen. They're going to be selling PlayStations like crazy. They're going to sell a lot of software because people are going to be buying games. What do they think they're going to have for that first quarter of next year, though? So why not take one of the biggest games that you have in your coffers, and you're going to have and especially when it's the finale to the game, they expect a lot of sales out of that. So why not move it? Sam Wan says people seem to be going a bit overboard at the moment. They're sitting on stuff for whatever reason, and unfortunately, we don't know anything until they decide to talk, which can be bad in itself. Absolutely, and that's the thing. Everything is conjecture now. Everybody has their own opinions. Everybody is just throwing stuff out there to see exactly what's really going on, and this is something that's been going on for a long time. Bungie has always been one of the most communicative companies out there as a developer, and nothing of this, like, they're not saying anything. Pete Parson came out with this half-baked tweet saying that he feels bad for the people that he's let go, and says if you have positions, please reach out to these people. And it just seems like he's saying this as a person that knows that this is kind of his fault. This is his fault. This is happening. Even if it's not his fault directly, it's his fault just for the fact that he felt like Sony was not going to make moves if they had to make moves later on. Let's see. Grim says that could also be an indication on their future content, though, content and games. It could be. That's why I said we don't know what's going to happen with as the Final Shape. We don't know. Supposedly, what's the name is delayed to 2025 now. I didn't think that game was coming out next year, but I guess they were kind of hoping it would when it comes to Marathon. So that game is being pushed to 2025. I always thought it was 2025. So, but we don't know what the content schedule on that game is going to be. And then you also have articles out there saying that PlayStation is pulling back on their live service push. And that's probably for the best because none of the developers want to do it. And I'm not saying they're going to pull back fully on all of their studios because there is some money that's invested in that. And they are going to see what happens and if anything could come from fruition from that. But ultimately, you need to do what you need to do that you do well. The reason I love what Xbox is doing is because Xbox is their core competency is services. Yes, they want to sell you a console. Do they care if you buy a console? No. They care if you are in their service. And their service, just if you go off of those leaked documents, they basically saying of 30, we want to have at least 120, 130 million people inside the Xbox Game Pass with an estimate 70 to 80 million of those people being off platform. And even Phil Spencer in his document said that that's not even enough. They want more people off platform. So that kind of tells you that 50 to 60 million Xboxes sold, maybe 70 at the high end, is good enough for Xbox. They don't have to sell 100 million consoles or 150 million consoles. They just need 150 million active users to make their plans be what they want them to be. And I commend them for that, because they're working towards something that them as a whole, as in Microsoft, is good at. PlayStation, they're chasing something I don't feel like they need to chase. Sure, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a live service game, because I think everybody should, because those are very lucrative games. But that don't mean you go full tilt into it. You don't turn all your studios into live service studios to see which one hits. You pick one or two and say, hey, these are games that we want to see if you can make, and what do you have that you could kind of turn into a service game that could kind of, bring in more revenue. And then you start there, and then you build on top of that. But you don't forget who you are. It just seems like PlayStation decided, or I should say Jim Ryan decided to say that we need to throw as many live service games against the window as possible and see what happens. And now PlayStation is seemingly, or Sony is seemingly coming back to reality and is like, yeah, we can't operate like that, because that's not what we're good at. Yeah, we can try, but we don't need to commit the whole fortress to it. Absolutely, Microsoft's on a different level than Sony when it comes to that, because Microsoft know who they are. They know just the sense that they know who they are. They know who they are at this point. They know they can't people find it funny when Phil Spencer comes out and says, we can't out console Sony. It's not that he's saying we can't compete with Sony. We just don't want to compete with them in that way anymore. We don't want to sell system to system with them. That's fine, because our goal is to just get games everywhere. And if they get enough people believing in that future, then the revenue will come. And they also got to remember, we're talking about the company that literally in 1975 was founded, 1985 made Windows. Windows is literally the thing that in compute is literally the thing that most people use. Yeah, Linux is a thing out there. Then Apple has their ecosystem and stuff, which is all fine. But for the most part, everybody's using Windows. All these developers and all of these corporations, Windows. So Xbox is trying to find another way to get to the next generation of gamers. And that's what the cloud is. That's what what Game Pass is for gamers and stuff, because they want the next group of kids or next group of individuals that grow up to be synonymous with Microsoft in that aspect, because the Windows is always going to be here. What's the next trick for Xbox? And that's the trick. For PlayStation, who knows? They're kind of trying to figure that out now. But I tell people is they should just be good at what they're good at. Single player games, action experiences, high budget games that are jaw-droppingly great looking. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nintendo, they have their lane. Their lanes are families, which is probably the most lucrative part of their ecosystem. But the formula doesn't change. Like if you look at the top of Nintendo to the bottom of it, outside of Iwata passing away, Reggie Fils-Aimé walked away because he wanted to retire. Everything else is the same there. Nothing else has changed. They're still making Mario games. They're still making Zelda games. And people say, well, those games are easy to make and they're just they just recycle content. Like, okay, but that's what they're good at. And guess what? They're so good at it, they sold a system that's almost going to be the most sold console of all time. That works for them. And as long as the masses are willing to, support it, that's all you should care about. PlayStation had, the mantle of some of the best single player games out there. If that's what you're good at, continue to keep doing it. Don't change. I mean, you can adapt, but you don't change the whole thing just to say, oh, we got to do something different and pivot. So we're going to make everybody do this. No, and that's the problem. That's where they're at right now. Which is interesting. Yeah, and that's what Sony fans don't understand. Absolutely. Chris Coleman says, do you know exactly what type of live service games PlayStations are doing? It seems today anything with multiplayer is considered live service. GT7, MLB, Ghost Legends is out. No, and some of those games are. Well, I think they do consider MLB anything that you have microtransactions in, that you can spend more money in. Those are kind of considered that. There's such a broad realm of live service. I don't think Fortnite live service. Pretty much anything that has a battle pass assigned to it is a live service. So Battlefield 2042, they're on season 6. Great, by the way. If you haven't played it, play it. It's good. Halo's a live service game because of a battle pass. Warzone for Call of Duty, same thing. I think those are the more the traditional ones, like Apex Legends and stuff like that. But even World of Warcraft from Blizzard, considered a live service. Diablo, it actually has a battle pass now, so that would be considered live service. So I think there's like games that are live service, but I also think there's games that are live service light, and the light ones would be something like GT7 or NBA 2K. Even though those games make more money than most other games, they're not full-fledged live service. It's just the things you could buy in the game that kind of make them live service. But who knows what Sony's making at this point? The games they shown, we have no idea what they really truly are at this point. Max says, I want Sony to deliver their AAA movie games like Last of Us, Uncharted, etc. And a lot of people want SOCOM Grim, but that's the thing. That's all they should be working on. Like Wolverine, you should be working on that. As much as I think Horizon Forbidden West and Zero Dawn are the most boring games I've ever played in my life, they're some of the best looking games ever. And guess what? To an extent, they're still some of the best looking games. Just like I can sit here and tell you that Halo 4 is by far still one of the best looking games I've ever played. And that's coming off of, and that was a 360 game. Some games just stand above the rest when it comes to visual quality. And that's what Sony is really good at. The narrative driven games with great cinematics. I beat Spider-Man the other day, Spider-Man 2. That game's gorgeous. The cinematics in that game are incredible. And guess what? It's a 20-hour experience. And when you're done with it, you're done with it. And I think that's kind of the problem. People, once you finish it, what are you going to do with it? And I think that's the thing that Sony wants to kind of conquer, or PlayStation wants to conquer. How do we get something that consistently keeps people in our ecosystem? Which is fine, but they got a long way to go to figure that out. Neil S says, any games with seasonal battle pass style models seems to fall into live service mode, continue delivery on new content at a regular cadence. Yeah, that's the thing. And that's the thing about Destiny that was so great. Even if you didn't like the overall structure of Destiny, every 3 months you knew you had a new season. Every calendar year you had a major expansion. And this has been something that's been going on for 9 years, with the Crescendo coming up in February of next year with the final shape, and that's being delayed to June. So who knows what's going to happen with that game in the future. But Halo, with their new season that just released, regular content, they're on season 5 right now. A lot of people are excited to play it. The maps look really cool. I haven't jumped in there yet, but I hear really good things about it. And it seems like, as a lot of people say in the chat, Halo's back. What's going on, Slow-Mo? Neil S says shooters, ARPGs, MMORPGs seem to be most common. They are, because they're the one. I mean, they're not the easiest to make. It's just the fact that, well, MMORPGs, I mean, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, those are kind of the stewards of it. Shooters kind of came in after that, and then ARPGs are, the newer iterations of that. Max says, I'm willing to wait for Christmas sales for Spider-Man 2, not worth 70 in my opinion. No, I mean, listen, man, money, dollars and cents are subjective. It's if you find it. I love Dead Space 2. I mean, Dead Space 1, one of my favorite games of all time. I did not buy it day one because I knew it was going to be inside the Game Pass at some point because of the EA Play access. It usually takes 6 to 9 months, and it just hit this month. So I've been playing it now, but I could wait because I already experienced that game, and I can save that money because plus there was a whole bunch of other games that came out around that time. And I knew I wasn't going to have time to play it, and it would have just sat in my inventory, and then I would have been mad because I could man, I didn't even play the game and I bought it, and it's in Game Pass now. So definitely understand what you're saying about that. Slow-mo says, Bungie is in trouble when Forte's doing an emergency live stream. It's not an emergency live stream. It's just upsetting because Bungie put themselves in this situation by once again thinking that nothing would change when they allowed themselves to be overseen by a bigger entity. I don't know why Pete Parson even thought that when he put that message out 2 years ago saying that, hey, nothing will change when it comes to the overall structure of what Bungie is. They were thinking that $3.6 billion they got with the 1.6 in retention was enough to keep people there. And yes, it was enough to keep people at the company, but it's not enough for Sony to say goodbye to some of those entities that kind of conflict with the ones that they already have, like PR, marketing, stuff like that, which are some of the stuff that kind of got let go. Grim says, Halo is fun again. The Forge maps are fun. Forge content is the driver of the cart. And Slow-mo says, sounds like an emergency live stream to me. Listen, Slow-mo. You trying to start something today, bro. It's trying to start something today. Don't know though. But first of all, I really appreciate you guys coming through. Didn't know how this was going to turn out because I don't do these too often. I'm not like Slow-mo and doing, lunch with Forte or, because Slow-mo doesn't do, he says he does lunchtime with Slow-mo, but half the time is in the morning before lunch. Half the time is after 3 o'clock, which is definitely not lunchtime anymore because lunchtime takes place between 11 and 1 o'clock, maybe 2 at the latest. But, I digress on that. Max says Island Wake 2. I did play day one. Glad I did. That game runs like a fantastic on the X. Yes, I keep hearing that. And I mean, the reviews on the game were really good. It started out at a high, like a low 9, like 9.1, 9.2. I think it dropped to like a 8.8 or 8.8, 88 at this point. Maybe a little lower, 86 or 7 now. Definitely glad that you're enjoying it, though. Definitely glad you're enjoying it. But I don't know. It's just more of the situation is definitely something to pay attention to. And I don't think it's over. I think we're going to hear more. I mean, Bungie hasn't even come out and talked about it yet. So who's to say that more isn't coming? Because you definitely don't want to come out and say, this is why we're doing this, and then you still continue to do it. You kind of probably want to wait till after the fact. Yeah, I know. Lunchtime is between 11 and 2, but your streams be at like 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they got the lunchtime with Slow-mo banner on them. So, just saying. Just saying. But, the biggest thing, like I said, once again, disappointing to see that all of the people that are affected by these layoffs, I hope you find yourself back on your feet very soon. My heart goes out to some of the people because I think for a lot of people, working at Bungie was like a dream job to them. I mean, listen, anytime you could work at your favorite studio that makes some of your favorite games, it's always amazing. And it seems like a lot of people knew that management inside of Bungie at the top was definitely a little weary. They were weary of it. But I always tell people it's not the corporation that, like, it's the people you work for, not the corporation. Like, yes, they pay you. Bungie's the one that's paying those people, but those people are willing to deal with a lot more stuff because of the people that they work with, the people they interact with on a day-to-day basis. And if you look at a lot of those tweets from all those people, it was more of this. It was more of the heartbreak that they can't work with some of their favorite people anymore. Shout out to Slow Mo with the 17 months, top 1%er. You know, question for Mr. Destiny: when will you finally play Halo? When you want to play Slow Mo? I'm picking up my dog today. Shout out to my I'm getting a Doge Hound, picking that up today. He will be 1 year old on November 6th. And one of my friends just can't take care of him. He works way too much, so he doesn't have time to spend with him. So my wife always wanted one, so I'm going to pick that up around 5 o'clock. But we could definitely play. I'm always ready to play. I bet you are. You made an excellent decision, division over this. Listen, I know. Destiny over division. The listen, I don't know what you're talking about, sir. Don't know what you're talking about, Slow. It always draws you back for a little while. Yeah. Let's see. What did I quit Destiny for at like? Well, Lightfall was the worst. A lot of people quit. I can't wait for Control 2, AW, Alan Wake 2 was solid, but wish they taken more inspiration from Control for the combat versus the original. I don't think they. I think they just didn't want to change the formula too much because Control, it plays vastly different from Alan Wake. I think they kind of wanted to keep more of the horror, the up close and personal horror versions of what Alan Wake brings. Plus, I think the story just kind of. I think if they would have deviated too much from that type of gameplay, then a lot of people would be a little bit upset about it. But I do think you're going to see a lot of stuff from a lot of improvements in Control 2 when it finally does release. A lot of people are going to be looking forward to that. But Slow-Mo, when you want to play, man? I guess I can put down. I could put down Battlefield for a minute, because Battlefield's great. I am almost. I think I'm like level 75. I think last time I played with you, Slow-Mo, I was like level 40, well, maybe level 35. I'm like 75 now, something crazy like that. But interesting. Halo's better. To be determined. But well, that's it, guys. I really appreciate you coming through. Just wanted to get this off my chest. I might do these a little bit more. I was sitting there thinking about it. I was like, I could make a video about this and, you know, really formulate and get my thoughts together about it. But I just kind of wanted to go off script and just talk about it. Plus, it gave me a chance to do this a little bit more because I don't do it as much as I should do it. But I appreciate all you guys that came through. Shout out to the 25 people that actually showed up to this impromptu stream and listened to me complain and rant and rave about how much I love Bungie and how upsetting this is. But ultimately, I believe most of this is Bungie's fault and not the developers, not the people that were impacted, but the people that make decisions that impact people at the lower level. And that's the thing that's kind of upsetting. So I'm not going to blame, just like I didn't blame Activision for all the stuff that happened at Bungie. Of course, Activision had its part in it, just like I think Sony has their part in this. But I just think a lot of stuff has come out about just Bungie and their overall way of working that kind of just lends itself to, hey, is it really them or is it mostly you? Only time will tell. But I appreciate you guys for coming through. Slow-mo, I'm gonna call you in a minute. We could probably jump into Halo if you ain't doing nothing before you pick up your kids or something, because I ain't got nothing going on. But I will see you guys later. DBS podcast will be this Thursday, 9 p.m. with the homie Slow-mo on his channel. So, make sure you subscribe to his channel, and make sure you subscribe to this one if you want to get more stuff like this. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a great week. Enjoy the games you're playing. Peace.